Welcome to the Two Beans in a Pod.
It's good to be back.
This is our first conversation of 2026, and wow, what a start to the year.
Yeah, no kidding. The whole thing kicked off, really, with that U.S. military operation ordered to capture Nicolas Maduro in Venezuela.
A huge moment, and that action really set the stage for what came just a few days later, which is what we're looking at today.
That's right. President Trump came out and proposed this just staggering number for the 2027 defense budget. He set the target at $1.5 trillion.
$1.5 trillion. The idea is to build what he's calling a dream military. And this proposal, this whole idea, it's really at the heart of the book, The $1 Trillion War Machine.
It is. The book lays out the entire ecosystem that makes a number like that even possible.
The number trillion sounds out of this world, but it is the systematic nature of the military industry complex, so make sure you stick around to the end.
And before we get into it, if you like what we do here, please do hit that like button.
And subscribe to the channel. It really helps us as we get going here in 2026.
Okay, so that number, 1.5 trillion.
Let's just start with the scale of it. It's a bit hard to wrap your head around.
It is. You're looking at a nearly 50% increase over the defense bill that just passed for 2026, which was, around $900 billion.
And the official reason, the public line, is what we always hear.
Yep. Troubled and dangerous times.
We need a dream military to keep the country safe and secure.
But the thing is, we're actually already getting close to that 1.5 trillion figure if you start adding in all the related annual costs.
Like what? What else is in there?
Well, you've got Veterans Affairs, Homeland Security, the nuclear programs run by the Department of Energy. So this proposal would basically make that astronomical figure the baseline for just the core military spending.
And how is the president saying we can afford this? Because that's always the big question.
Well, he's claiming it's comfortable.
Comfortable?
Yeah. He's tying it to the tremendous income that he says is being generated by tariffs all over the world.
So the tariffs are paying for the military expansion. That's the argument.
That's the argument.
Mm-hmm.
But what's really fascinating here is the political balancing act.
How so?
Because at the same time he's proposing this huge budget, he's also taking this very public, very tough stance against the big defense contractors. He even called out Raytheon, or RTX, by name.
Right, the whole warfighters not Wall Street slogan.
Exactly. The administration says the goal is to revitalize the industrial base, maintain peace through strength. But this time they're actually putting some teeth into it.
So what are the actual restrictions? What does the executive order do?
It puts immediate and pretty targeted limits on corporate behavior. It says that any contractor who's identified for underperformance or non-compliance or not investing enough, they are flat out prohibited from doing stock buybacks or issuing dividends.
Wow. So that's a direct hit at what people call the financialization of the defense industry.
It is. It's this idea that these companies have been prioritizing shareholder profits, boosting the stock price over actually reinvesting in making better products. It's choosing Wall Street over the warfighter.
And the new contracts are supposed to fix that.
That's the plan. They want to tie executive pay to performance metrics. Like, did you deliver on time? Did you increase production? Not just, did the stock go up?
It's an attempt at accountability, but the book points out this pretty big irony, doesn't it?
Oh, a massive one. Because the whole business model thrives on conflict. You have the Raytheon CEO, Gregory Hayes, on record at the start of the Ukraine war.
What did he say?
He said, and I'm quoting here, that the company does not apologize for making these systems and that they will see some benefit in the business over time from all this strife.
So their profits are directly tied to global conflict.
Intrinsically. And those profits come from contracts for weapons systems that, as the book documents in painful detail, often just don't work.
And that's where the taxpayer money really gets lost and where our service members are put at risk. Let's get into some of those documented failures.
We should probably start with the biggest one of all.
The F-35.
The F-35 combat aircraft. It's on track to be the most expensive weapons program in human history. We're talking a $2 trillion projected life cycle cost.
$2 trillion? And for what? A jet that was supposed to do everything but can't really do any of its jobs well?
It's inferior in a dogfight, it's too light to carry a meaningful bomb load, and it's still got, over 800 unresolved defects? Some of them are serious safety risks for the pilots.
And it's famously available only about 30% of the time. The part-time fighter jet. It's a terrible nickname for something that's supposed to be a deterrent.
It really shows you how these programs work, though. It's less about the actual military need and more about being a jobs program. with parts made in all these key congressional districts.
So it becomes politically impossible to cancel it no matter how badly it performs.
Exactly. Too big to fail.
And then you have systems where the human cost is just so much more immediate and devastating, like the V-22 Osprey.
The Widowmaker.
A truly awful nickname.
And horribly earned. 10 fatal crashes since it was deployed, 64 service members killed. It has these persistent mechanical problems that led to the U.S. and Japan grounding their entire fleets.
Yet there's always immense pressure to get them flying again.
Which just shows you the priority is the program, not necessarily the safety.
And we can't forget the Navy's littoral combat ship, the LCS.
Or as the sailors called it, the little crappy ship.
A ship that was basically defenseless, couldn't do its missions, but lobbying kept it alive until they had to decommission 7 of them decades ahead of schedule.
All of these failures, they're staggering, but they really just point to the deeper issue.
The corruption.
The corruption that's just baked into the whole procurement system.
You're talking about things like the Fat Leonard scandal. That was just shocking.
Systemic is the word. You had this one contractor, Leonard Francis, bribing scores of Navy officers with cash, parties, all sorts of things.
And the investigation ended up sweeping in hundreds of people.
Nearly 1,000. Almost 700 service members were compromised. It just shows a culture where influence and loyalty can be bought.
And the revolving door just makes it all worse, like that recent case with the 4-star Admiral Robert Burke.
I mean, a 4-star admiral? Indicted. He accepted a $600,000 job offer from a company while he was still on active duty.
And in exchange, he steered a Department of War contract their way.
It's the perfect example of how that financial incentive starts long before an officer even retires. Which brings us to the really organized part of this.
The influence machine.
Exactly. How lobbying, think tanks, and even universities all work together to manufacture consensus and just keep that fire hose of taxpayer money flowing.
Okay, so let's shift to that. How does all this money translate into real power in Washington? The lobbying numbers alone are just mind-boggling.
They really are. Just in 2024, arms companies spent over $138 million on lobbying.
$148 million.
And here's the key part. They employ somewhere between 800 and 1,000 lobbyists.
So there's more than one lobbyist for every single member of Congress.
Literally. And it's not just the money they spend, it's who these people are. That's what makes them so effective.
These are former insiders.
That's right. Almost 2/3 of them are former government officials, military officers, congressional staffers. They have the contacts, they know the system, and the book points to some really striking cases of, well, dual loyalty.
You mean like the former Speaker Buck McKeon?
That's a perfect example. He was lobbying for Lockheed Martin.
The company selling the weapons.
And at the same time, he registered as a foreign agent for Saudi Arabia.
The country buying the weapons.
It's the monetization of public service. His firm helped both sides push arms deals through, even while those very weapons were being used in the war in Yemen. It shows you how the revolving door directly connects corporate profits to foreign policy.
Okay, so that's the direct lobbying.
Yeah.
But then this consensus has to be created in the public sphere, right? That's where think tanks come in.
Right, and there's supposed to be these bastions of objective expert analysis.
But they're not, are they?
Not when you follow the money.
Yeah.
The book shows that think tanks funded by Pentagon contractors just completely dominate the public debate. They get cited something like 7 times more often than non-funded ones.
And surprise, surprise, their recommendations usually end up benefiting their donors.
Always. Take the Abrams tank situation in Ukraine.
A perfect case study.
You had all these think tanks funded by General Dynamics, the company that makes the Abrams, touting it as this essential, game-changing weapon for Ukraine. But the reality on the battlefield is very different.
What happened?
Within just 6 months, nearly 2/3 of the tanks they sent were either destroyed or disabled by cheap Russian drones.
So the expert consensus pushed a flawed weapon system into a war zone.
And sometimes it's even more direct. We saw this with the Center for New American Security, CNAS.
This was the UAE report.
Yeah, the paper trail shows they got paid $250,000 by the United Arab Emirates to produce a private report.
A report arguing for what?
For loosening U.S. restrictions on drone exports. And what happens right after that report comes out? The U.S. authorizes a nearly $3 billion drone sale to the UAE.
So a foreign government literally paid for a policy change.
It looks exactly like that. And this influence network goes even deeper, all the way into academia. Universities are a huge part of this.
The Pentagon is a massive source of research and development funding, right?
One of the biggest. In fiscal year 2022, they poured over $8 billion into U.S. universities for R&D.
And Johns Hopkins is the prime example.
It is. Their Applied Physics Lab, the APL, got over $2 billion in R&D funding in 2022 alone. And the Navy just extended a contract that could be worth up to $10.6 billion through 2027.
Why so much money for one university lab?
Because that's where the brave new war machine is being built.
Yeah.
It's all about accelerating AI and autonomous weapons development.
Which raises all sorts of ethical questions.
Huge questions. Proponents will tell you it takes soldiers out of harm's way, but the critics, they warn, it just makes it easier for governments to decide to go to war because the perceived risk is lower.
And it opens the door to what some call automated slaughter if an AI system fails or makes a catastrophic error.
So you have this complex that basically controls Congress. It shapes expert opinion. It funds the university research. So the last piece of the puzzle is to capture the public's imagination.
They need the American people on board.
The need is enthusiastic about this whole hyper-militarized worldview.
Yeah.
And for that, they turn to Hollywood.
The Department of Defense has its own office for this, the Entertainment Liaison Office.
They do. And they're the gatekeepers. If you want to use their expensive equipment, their jets, their aircraft carriers, you have to let them revise your script.
And the goal is always a positive portrayal of the military.
Always. The book uses Captain Marvel as a prime example.
It calls it an unapologetic propaganda ad for the Air Force.
And it was. The ELO literally dictated script changes to make sure the movie would inspire new recruits. Taxpayers footed the bill for the use of B-2 bombers and all this other gear, but it was just written off as a recruiting expense.
And this creates what the book calls the silver screen lie. The glamour hides the broken reality.
That's it, exactly. You see these flawed, dangerous, ridiculously expensive systems looking amazing on screen. The F-35, with its 800 defects, shows up in movies like The Avengers.
But you never see a scene where it's grounded for maintenance.
Never. And you never hear the $2 trillion price tag. It just replaces any kind of critical thought with this emotional, patriotic connection.
And that connection gets reinforced with these big public spectacles like the Air Force Thunderbirds flyovers.
Right. A single flyover at the Super Bowl would cost an organizer about $100,000 an hour.
But they don't pay that.
Nope. The fees are waived. It's classified as community outreach. It's just a massive taxpayer-funded recruitment ad.
And now they're even mining the gaming industry.
Yeah.
The line between military simulations and commercial video games is getting blurrier and blurrier.
So you end up with this environment where the public is just constantly surrounded by these sanitized, positive images of militarism.
Yeah.
And it blinds us to the real cost.
Okay, so let's talk about that cost, the domestic trade-off. We're talking about a comprehensive military cost of $1.5 trillion a year. That money has to come from somewhere.
And it comes directly from domestic investment. The book lays out some heartbreaking comparisons.
Like what?
The Pentagon's annual budget is more than 20 times what the entire U.S. government is slated to invest in fighting climate change.
20 to 1.
For every dollar we spend trying to solve the climate crisis, we spend 20 on the military.
But wait, let me just push back on that for a second. The standard argument you'll hear is that we need this level of spending, that it's a necessary deterrent against China or other rising powers. How does the book handle that peace through strength idea?
It argues that our very definition of strength has been corrupted, that this relentless drive for military dominance actually makes the U.S. less safe.
How?
By fueling global arms races and, more importantly, distracting us from our own vulnerabilities right here at home. And you can see the human toll. The post-9/11 wars have led to nearly 1 million deaths.
And the cost for veterans is just devastating.
Over 30,000 active duty members and veterans have died by suicide since 9/11. That's a staggering price to pay.
And you can draw a direct line from these skewed priorities to domestic crises, can't you? Like the Flint water crisis.
Absolutely. That was a case where a lack of federal funding for basic infrastructure led to a tragedy. It's not that the nation doesn't have the resources. It's that our priorities are completely upside down.
So what's the solution? The book calls for a unified peace network to challenge the whole system.
It does, and it lays out some very specific necessary reforms to rein in this $1.5 trillion machine.
Things like what?
Much tighter restrictions on the revolving door. Full mandatory transparency on contractor funding for think tanks and universities.
And what about Hollywood?
Mandatory candid disclosures at the beginning of any movie or show that was made with military cooperation.
So ultimately, it's about a fundamental shift in our national ethos away from a military-first approach.
Towards real diplomacy and social investment. The entire system is propped up by this myth of American exceptionalism, this idea that our intentions are always pure and our violence is always justified.
And that narrative is the final layer of protection for the whole complex.
It is.
So here's a final thought to leave you with. What if this drive for military dominance and the $1.5 trillion machine that fuels it is actually making the U.S. less safe? What if it's actively undermining our democracy? The book argues that the only real path to security is to challenge that core concept of American exceptionalism itself and demand that our nation's resources finally serve its people, not the war machine.
And that means having a very different and probably much harder national conversation.
Thank you for listening to Two Beans in a Pod. Please order the book from the link below.